गिरिवारधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रजनरञ्जन यशोदा नन्दन व्रजनरञ्जन यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीजनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीजनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दन व्रजनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रजनरञ्जन यमुनातीरावनचारी यमुनातीरावनचारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा माधव राधे जय राधा रास बिहारी राधे जय गौरांगी बैंगलोरेश्वर गौरांगी जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शन जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय अनंत देव प्रहलाद नरसिंह जय जय निताय चैतन्य जय निताय चैतन्य जय निताय चैतन्य जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव निताय गौर हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल गौर प्रेमानंद हरि बोल। हरि नाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाचार्य स्तोत्र शतम। His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaram, the Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya, BVD Founder Acharya, Savior of the whole universe, Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajak Acharya Stotra Shata. His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Anant Kodi Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Jai Shri Roop Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadas Raghunath Chat Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय. जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण चंद्र गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय. मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय. मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय. श्री क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. द्वारिका धाम की जय. गंगा माई की जय. जमुना माई की जय. कावेरी माई की जय. भक्ति देवी की जय. तुलसी महारानी की जय. समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय. निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories and glories and glories. Glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudhirajena Staprai Shubhadreshu Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayatam Grim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurudim Taranam Paramanandam Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvara. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. Welcome all the devotees, both online and offline, to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 28, and today we are starting the first verse from the chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabjasya Dripatamaje Manoyene Vidina Prasannayeta Satpatal Phalam Fatam Satpatam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabjiyasya Nripatamaje Manoyenaiva Vidinam Prasannam Yeti Satphalat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Yogasya Lakshanam Vakshe Sabjisya Nipratamaje Manoyenaiva Vidina Prasannam Yeta Satpatam. Word-to-word translation. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the personality of God had said, Yogasya, of the yoga system, Lakshanam, description, Vakshe, I shall explain, Sabjasya, authorized, Dripa Atmaje, O daughter of the king, Mana, the mind, Yena, by which, Eva, certainly, Vidina, by practice, Prasanna, joyful, Yati, attains, Satpatam, the path of absolute truth. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation to the verse. The personality of God had said, My dear mother, O daughter of the king, now I shall explain to you the system of yoga, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. By practicing the system, one can become joyful and progressively advance towards the path of absolute truth. Purport. The yoga process explained by Lord Kapila Dev in this chapter is authorized and is standard. And therefore, this instruction should be followed very carefully. To begin, the Lord says that by yoga practice, one can make progress towards understanding the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous chapter, it has been clearly stated that the desired results of yoga is not to achieve some wonderful mystic power. One should not at all be attracted by such mystic power, but should attain progressive realization on the path of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, which states in the last verse of the 6th chapter that the greatest yogi is one who constantly thinks of Krishna within himself, or he who is Krishna conscious. It is stated here that by following the system of yoga, one can become joyful. Lord Kapila, the personality of Godhead, who is the highest authority on yoga, here explains the yoga system known as the Ashtanga Yoga, which comprises 8 different practices, namely Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. By all the stages of practice, one must realize Lord Vishnu, who is the target of all yoga. There are so-called yoga practices in which one concentrates the mind on voidness or on impersonal. But this is not approved by the authorized yoga system as explained by Kapila Dev. Even Patanjali explains that the target of all yoga is Vishnu. Ashtanga yoga is therefore a part of Vaishnava practice because its ultimate goal is realization of Vishnu. The achievement of success in the yoga is not the acquisition of mystic power, which is condemned in the previous chapter, but rather freedom from all material designations and situations in one's constitutional position. That is the ultimate achievement of yoga practice. We will also continue the next verse. Just allow me 1 minute to take the next verse. Just give me 1 minute while the page is opening. The next verse, Swadharma Charana Satya Vidharmaka Chanivratam Daivalalabdena Santosha Atmavik Charanancharam. Swadharma Acharanam, executing one's prescribed duties, Satya, to the best of one's ability. Vidharmat, unauthorized duties, Cha, and Nivratam, avoiding, Daivat, by the grace of the Lord, Labdhena, with what is achieved, Santosha, satisfied, Atmavit, of the self-realized soul, Charana, the feet, Acharanam, worshipping. Translation and purport to the second verse of 28th chapter. Translation. One should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his abilities and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord. And one should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Purport. In this verse, there are many important words which could be very elaborately explained, but we shall briefly discuss the important aspects of each. The final statement is Atmavik Charana Charan. Atmavit means self-realized soul or a bona fide spiritual master. Unless one is self-realized and knows what his relation with the super soul is, he cannot be bona fide spiritual master. Here it is recommended that one should seek out a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him. Archanam. For by inquiring from and worshipping him, one can learn spiritual activities. The first recommendation is Swadharma Acharanam. As long as we have this material body, there are various duties prescribed to us. Such duties are divided by a system of four social orders: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. These particular duties are mentioned in the Shastras. And particularly in Bhagavad Gita, Swadharma Acharanam means that one must discharge the prescribed duties of his particular division of society faithfully and to the best of his ability. One should not accept another's duty. If one is born in a particular society or community, he should perform the prescribed duties of that particular division. If, however, one is fortunate enough to transcend the designation of birth in a particular society or community by being elevated to the standard of spiritual identity, then his swadharma or duty is solely that of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The actual duty of one who is advanced in Krishna consciousness is to serve the Lord. As long as one remains in the bodily concept of life, he may act according to the duties of the social convention. But if one is elevated to the spiritual platform, he must simply serve the Supreme Lord. That is the real execution of Swadharma. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 28, and the verse numbers were 1 and 2. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshururmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Patakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarobhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So with continuation from the last chapter where Lord Kapila instructs his mother, we're continuing this reading and understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today while we're discussing this chapter, the beginning of this chapter, it's very important that we understand nicely what is being looked at. Well, the chapter is titled Kapil Dev or Kapila Muni's instructions on the execution of devotional service. Yeah. So the real process of controlling the mind is the only absolute truth. That is, the real process is controlling the mind. Initially, it shows us how to sit, how to stretch, how to sit properly. And that's the way that the yoga actually guides us to control our mind in that particular position. Yoga practice, if we really break it down further, it says yoga practice means to control the senses. Okay. And just before that also, if we look at it, there are 12 Mahajanas of the Lord, 12 great devotees of Lord Vishnu. The ultimate knower. Why do we call them Mahajanas? We call them Mahajanas because they are the ultimate knowers of Dharma. And this is from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is where it describes very clearly from 6th canto, 3rd chapter, text number 20 and 21. It says, Swayambhur Narada Swambho Kumara Kapilo Manu Prahalado Janako Vishmo Valiri Vaidya Vayam Dvandache Vijayamano Dharmam Bhagavatam Bhata Uyam Vishuddham Durlabho Yam Nanavratam Asnurte. So who are these 12 Mahajanas? The 12 Mahajanas is Lord Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, the 4 Kumaras, Lord Kapila. Lord Kapila, specifically the son of Devahuti, Swayambhu Manu, Prahalad Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, grandfather Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, and Shukadev Goswami, and Yama. And this is how it is described. So these 12 Mahajanas are the ultimate in knowing the Dharma, or ultimately knowing the Lord Vishnu. So that is why they are called Mahajanas. We look at the story of Ajamil, in the story of Ajamil, where it was a great understanding that we get out of this, the great realization that we get is Ante Narayana Smriti. End of life, if you remember Narayana, your life will be successful. How do you remember Krishna at the end of your life? Let's look at the story of Ajamil. Ajamil also born in a Brahmana family, practicing everything nicely. But then at a later date, just because of one small, engagement that he had with his mind, which fell out of control, he saw a prostitute embracing a person there or in the forest, and that disturbed him completely from the Brahmana vritti that he had and all that he was doing all his life. And he fell into wrong places. He went into, satisfying the prostitute by murdering people, taking away money, looting people and all that. But as time progresses, with this prostitute, he begets some children. And among the children, the last one, the youngest one, he names him as Narayana. And at the time of death, when the Yamadutas come to take away Ajamil, he screams for his son in that fear of seeing those, very ugly pictures, ugly faces, ugly personalities who have come to take him. He starts screaming and starts calling out his youngest son, to whom he was very attached. Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. And just because he is calling out Narayana, though not really he is calling out Lord Narayana, he is only calling out his youngest son, whom he had named Narayana. But just because he called the name of Lord Vishnu or Narayana, the Vishnu Dutas come there and save him. How do they save him? They take him away from the hands of Yamadutas, and then he gets another life to perfect himself. He perfects the path of devotional service and then goes back home. So life is successful if we can remember Narayana at the end of our life, which is the most difficult thing. So the real purpose is to give us Asat path or to take up Sat path. Sat and Asat, these are two things. If I get a nice car, if I get a nice apartment, bank balance, none of this are going to stay with us. As long as the body is there, all these things will belong to us. The moment the body is finished, everything will go away. And whatever goes away is called Asat. That's not the fact. It's not the truth. Okay. Sat is one which makes the progress towards a permanent life. And what is a permanent life? We all know very well that we are not this body, we are the spirit soul. And when we are the spirit soul, for us, the permanent progress that we look at is how do we go back home, back to Godhead? How do we progress towards our ultimate gati? So we are all training, as devotees, we are all training to make progress in being towards the permanent life. Those who are intelligent are not interested in the temporary life. They think that, okay, these are all things which will come and go, but then I need to really target for something which is very, very permanent. So we have to hear about the absolute truth from the person who are endeavoring to make progress. There are so many other fake gurus who come and, they speak, you surrender unto me. You do whatever you want to do. There's absolutely nothing, no problem. You can smoke, you can drink, you can have illicit sex. But the only thing is you come and surrender unto me. Whatever money you have, you come and give it to me. So this kind of knowledge is not what we are looking at. Yeah. So we have to hear about the absolute truth from the person who's endeavoring to make progress towards a permanent life. And here we see Kapila Dev gives instructions to his mother. Mother Devahuti is not worried that my son is this little fellow whom I gave birth from my womb, and now he's only teaching me. Anybody who can give us knowledge of the absolute truth can be taken as guru. Age, relationship, birth should not be considered as a barrier. This is a very, very important thing. Many times, people say, oh, he's younger to me, how can I take him as guru? No, age is not a barrier. Age is only on the personal appearance, physical appearance, not personal appearance, the physical appearance of that person. So age, relationship, birth should never be considered as a barrier for accepting somebody as a guru. Mahaprabhu confirmed this. And there's a very nice pastime that we all remember is of Mahaprabhu having this conversation with Ramananda Rai. And we all know that Mahaprabhu was born in a very, very nice, advanced Brahmana family, very respectable family from Bengal. He was very qualified. He was very well read of the Shastras. He could, speak about anything and everything that you talk about from the Shastras. But on the contrary, Ramananda Rai, who was the government of Madras, he was a householder. He was born in a Kayastha family, not a very elevated family in so-called words, and they are also considered as Shudras. They are not really at a very elevated platform from the material viewpoint. And he has no position to instruct Mahaprabhu. But still, Mahaprabhu gave him the position of an instructor. And he himself took the position of a student. And Mahaprabhu also confirms with Ramananda Rai saying that, please go ahead, please tell me, about the personality of Godhead. So Ramananda Rai initially was feeling very, very hesitant. But Mahaprabhu said, no, please go ahead. You have to speak about the holy name. You have to speak about the supreme personality of Godhead and teach me. So here, as we said earlier, Ramananda Rai was given the position of an instructor, and Mahaprabhu himself became or took the position of a student. So we can understand that it is very important that we ignore the age, relationship, birth, position, all that to accept somebody to give us the holy name, or to accept somebody as a guru. Guru can be various kinds. It can be, Diksha Guru, it can be Siksha Guru, it can be Marga Pradakshina Guru, various kinds of gurus. But to accept a guru, age, relationship, bar should not be there. Birth should not be there. Their community, their belonging should never be considered at all. In Kali Yuga, all distinctions will be lost. Now, what are the qualities of a Brahmana? To say so, there are 6 Brahmanical qualities that one should really look at this. Patan Patan, Yajan Yajan, Dana and Pratigraha. So Patan Patan, so worshipping the deities. Patan Patan is studying the Vedic literature and teaching the Vedic literature. Then you have worshipping the deities, teaching others how to worship the deity. Apart from that, accepting charity from others and giving charity to others. So it's Brahmanas. These days we always say only Brahmanas should accept. We should not give. No. The 6 qualities of Brahmana, which is prescribed in our Shastra, says very clearly that he's a qualified Brahmana when he's worshipping the deities, he's teaching others how to worship the deities, he's studying the Vedas, he's also teaching others how to how to understand the Vedas. He is also accepting charity from others and giving charity to others. Yeah, it is very easy to become a learned scholar. And how is it easy for us to become a learned scholar? Srila Prabhupada made this statement. He said it is very easy to become a learned scholar because we have so many books that we publish. Srila Prabhupada himself said this. He said we have made so many books, we have printed so many books that anybody can become a learned scholar. So here, in the previous story that we are hearing about Ramananda Rai and Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Rai was giving the lesson to Mahaprabhu. And he says, Kiva Vipra Kiva Nyasi Shudra Kene Naya Ye Krishna Tattva Veti Se Guru Haya. It does not matter whether a person is a Vipra, a learned scholar in Vedic wisdom, or is born in a very lower family, or he is a renounced order, that means a sannyasi, or if he's a master of science of Krishna. He is perfect and bona fide spiritual master. If he's a master in the science of Krishna, he's a perfect bona fide spiritual master. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 8.128. So without being a master in the science of Krishna consciousness, no one can become a bona fide spiritual master. So that's the basic quality of one to become a spiritual master. He should be the master of science of Krishna consciousness. Anyone can become a guru who can understand the science of Krishna. What is Krishna? When one understands that as to what is Krishna and who is Krishna, he becomes a spiritual master. It is not necessary that one needs to be born in a Brahmin family or he needs to be born in India. No. If you can understand and preach this properly, the science of Krishna, people will get benefited. And just by benefiting the people at large, you become a spiritual master. Because Kapila Dev is an exalted, Kapila Dev himself is exalted. He is the supreme personality of Godhead, but at the same time, his mother is also very exalted. And she is taking lessons from his own son. Who was Mata Devahuti? Mata Devahuti was the daughter of Vaivasata Manu. She's a queen herself, born in a Kshatriya family. She's not an ordinary person. At the same time, she married Kardam Muni, who's again a great yogi. So, Mother Devahuti is not an ordinary person. And when she's seeking to take advice from Kapila Muni, that means Kapila Muni is even greater. And as we said, he's a personality of Godhead himself. So going back a little bit, Vaivasata Manu, the father of the whole universe, had children, and Devahuti was one among those child. And while Kardam Muni was, meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the forest, at once he just thought that he should get married. And this just thought came to his mind and it passed by. At the same time, Devahuti goes to her father, Vaivasata Manu, and says that I would like to get married to a great devotee of the Lord, a great yogi called Kardam Muni. And father accepts it, and they go to the forest. And then here, Vaivasata Manu requests Kardam Muni, saying that please accept my daughter in donation. When we say donation, now also it is very popularly known in India. We say that, we give donation of the daughter in marriage to the son-in-law. So likewise, Vaivasvata Manu gave his daughter, he requested Kardam Muni to accept his daughter as Kardam Muni's wife and, accept that donation. And Vaivasvata Manu, marries Devahuti, and then he leaves the place and goes back to rule his kingdom. Kardam Muni was living in a very small place, and Mother Devahuti would assist him in collecting, everything and performing the yagnas. She would serve him very nicely. By the time he goes to get ready, she ensures that the yagna kunda is ready. By the time he completes the yagna kunda, she ensures that the bhoga offering is ready and the bhoga is offered to the Lord. And once the bhoga is offered, she nicely takes care of Kardam Muni to honor the prasad. And without caring for herself, she is all the way in her life lived in a palace, but she never cares for it. She had so many, dasis to assist him, but then she would not really get worried about it. Personally, she would worship, she would serve Kardam Muni, who's a great devotee of the Lord. So by this way, she was not caring for her body. She had actually become very lean. We spoke about all this in the previous chapter, just in the starting of the previous chapter. So here, without caring for anything, she served Kardam Muni. And at a later date, when she had this desire of begetting children, she expresses that desire to Kardam Muni, and Kardam Muni says, yes, I shall do that. And with only one condition, that the moment that, you have a child, I will renounce and, I will go away from here. And she does that. By yoga power, Kardam Muni constructed a city in which, actually it was, the city was like an aeroplane. This was floating in the air. He satisfied Mother Devahuti in all respects. And then finally, she also wanted to have children. And with one condition that we said, once the children are born, he would leave home and go to the forest. Likewise, as his father, Kapila Muni also decided that he'll leave his mother. And before he left, he gave these instructions. He gave these instructions of yoga. Just to, go a little different on a little different tangent, we always understand that a lady or a mother should always have 3 stages of protection. For a mother or for a lady, the first stage of protection is her father, who takes care of her. The second stage of protection comes when the father gives away the hand of this girl to a husband, to a person who becomes her husband. So second stage of protection is by the husband. And the third stage of protection is when the husband either leaves the body or goes to the forest, the son takes care of mothers. Yeah, this is the Vedic way of life, and this should be followed. So, we talk about a lot of things about freedom of women and all that. Yes, freedom of women is very, very important. Yes, they should, practice Krishna consciousness nicely. There should not be restrictions. They should follow the Vedic culture. But at the same time, they should always be under the protection of a man. Either it will be father, husband, or son. These are three people who are actually the protectors of a mother. And here in the shloka itself, Kapila Muni addresses his mother as my dear daughter of the king. Yeah, he's bringing her to the highest stage, saying that daughter of the king, Vaivasvata Manu. And she says, what are the symptoms of a yoga? And what are the authorized symptoms of the yoga? And he says, we are all conditioned souls, but the Lord is always perfect. Lord is full. He is complete in all aspects. So, Kapila Muni gives this example, saying that, oh, daughter of the king, what are the conditions or what are the symptoms of a yoga and what are the authorized yogas? These days, people talk about, the yoga system, which is again a cheated yoga system. It's not the complete yoga system. Here in this chapter, we saw it is the Ashtanga yoga, which is being taught. But in the current scenario, in the Kali Yuga, we see people with imperfect knowledge try to give us perfect knowledge. How is it possible? If you are imperfect, how can you give perfect knowledge? Which is not possible at all. On an imperfect platform, how can you give perfect knowledge? So one needs to become perfect to give perfect knowledge. And we have to take lessons from a perfect person only. And while we are preaching what Krishna said, we don't have to manufacture anything of our own. It should be evam parampara praptam. Whatever is spoken by the acharyas in the Guru Parampara should be spoken. And that's how it becomes perfect. The spiritual master who follows the perfect teacher is a perfect spiritual master. And as he's talking about the perfect person, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever he speaks is also perfect. So let's take one small example. There's a small child who's asking the father, there's a microphone which is there. Srila Prabhupada gave this example in one of his lectures. And Srila Prabhupada said, the child is asking the father, saying that, what is this? And the father says, this is a microphone. The child is imperfect. He doesn't know what is a microphone, what is the use of a microphone, how is microphone made, all of that. But because he's listening to an authorized person, he listens to his father and repeats the same thing. He goes and tells that this is the microphone. But how does the other person accept that this is microphone, or how does the child himself say this is the microphone? Because he's heard it from a perfect person. His father, he considers to be a perfect person. And when he says this is a microphone, yes, he accepts it as a microphone and he takes the lessons from his father. And in the perfect knowledge, we never speak about saying that we don't talk anything like this. I think, perhaps, maybe, could be. No. We say definitely this is what it is. We have the perfect knowledge. As we are talking, the perfect knowledge which comes in parampara is from a perfect person. Krishna himself spoke about Gita. So it is a perfect knowledge which is coming down in the disciplic succession. And we are hearing about the perfect person from another perfect person. So that's why our hearing becomes perfect, or what we speak becomes perfect. We say there are about 900,000 living entities in the water. Has any one of us lived in the water for a long time to figure out if there are 900,000 living entities there? We don't have to do the research in the water. Our Shastras mention this. So we accept it because that's a perfect knowledge. When we speak about the perfect knowledge, because it is coming from the perfect source, this also becomes perfect. Yeah. And when it is spelled out saying that there are 900,000 living entities under the water, so one has to accept it because it is coming from perfect knowledge. You see, we talk about Darwin. Darwin is also taking his knowledge from the Vedic principles. And he placed it, or he spoke in a way that he found it suitable for himself, which is absolutely wrong. One should not speak the Vedic knowledge as per their own whims and fancies or their own suitability. In human form, by gradual process evolution, we can decide that if we want to go to Satpat or Ashatpat. What is Ashatpat? Asatpat is something which is not going to stay for a long time, very short in duration that one really lives at. In human form of life, we can either go to higher planetary systems. We are all civilized. We are so-called civilized. So we decide whether we want to break the cycle of Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, or we want to continue again and again, over and over. Come back birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, and continue in every cycle. We don't know in the cycle whether we're going to have the form of a human life, or we're going to have a dog, or we're going to be a reptile, or we're going to be a mammal, whatever. So in human form, because we are civilized, we decide that we want to break the cycle of Janma Mrityu Chirayavadi and go ahead. If we remain engaged in bodily business of life, like, I'm an American, I'm a Brahmin, I'm a Bangalorean, I'm a Mumbaikar, we are no better than cats and dogs. We don't have to identify ourselves with this body. So yoga is something which is taught by Lord Kapila to his mother, is Satpat. It's the perfect way. It is never temporary. It is the permanent way. It says in the last line, Prasannam yeti Satpatam. It is a permanent way of looking at it, and you become happy when you talk about this particular yoga practice. Yoga practice makes you, or makes your mind transparent. It cleans whatever is there within our heart, and you can go towards Satpatam. See, there are basically 3 steps which are, or I would say 4 steps which are described. Step 1 is, as far as possible, be situated in natural life. What is natural form of life? Natural form of life is, passion, ignorance. Sattva, Rajo, and Tamas. We are a combination of these gunas. Yeah. And for example, if we take first class or second class, we go by any class of trade. We have to go back home. Either you're in passion, ignorance, or, Shuddha Sattva. We should really go back. So one can go back home, back to God, provided he knows how to tackle the situation. How does one tackle the situation? By the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. The step 2 that comes is, the various, the 4 occupational duties that we call Brahmana, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Shudra. Example is taken here of Arjuna. He's a Kshatriya, he's fighting. His fighting is served as the order of Krishna as an occupational duty. The yoginam api sarvesha. He's a yogi who follows the orders of life, and whatever is the instructions of Krishna, or whatever the instructions of Guru, he follows. So then he becomes a yogi. And then we have to try and satisfy Krishna in whatever capacity we have. And Krishna says, the one who preaches the holy name of the Lord is very dear to me. So are we trying to satisfy Krishna? In Bhagavad Gita, he says this. So if we try and preach the holy name of the Lord, execute the orders of the spiritual masters, if you look at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he gave a very simple order to Srila Prabhupada. He said, you are in the English-speaking gentleman, why don't you go to the Western world and preach those English-speaking population? And Srila Prabhupada took it so close to his heart. And at a very elderly age, he travels to America, preaches. And not only preaches, he sets up 108 temples across all the continents. He travels all over the world. And that also not once, twice. He travels 14 times. What did he do? He just tried to satisfy Krishna, or he tried to satisfy Guru Maharaj orders. In whatever capacity we have, Srila Prabhupada never said, I'm an elderly man, let me stay at Radha Damodar Mandir and continue my bhajan. No, he wanted to execute orders of his spiritual master, and he goes to the Western world and preaches. Last but not the least, anything that helps us, or I would put it across this way, anything that does not help us in serving Krishna consciousness, or it does not help us becoming situated in the original occupation and position, should be given up. Associating with non-devotees is something which does not help you serving Krishna. It does not help you becoming situated in the original occupational position. We should give it time. So here in the shlokas today, that both the shlokas that we discussed, it is very nicely, Srila Prabhupada explains that one should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his abilities and avoid performing duties which are not allocated to it. Yeah. If I'm a Brahmana, for example, I shouldn't be taking Gandiva and then going for a fight. Or I shouldn't be going into the forest killing animals. If I'm a Shudra, I should not think of sitting on the throne. No. This is given by Shastras. It is not something that I'm speaking. It says one should execute the prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duty is not allotted to him. And again, this is very specific to us, which says one should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. That's the part of it that we should really look at it. And the yoga system which is given by Kapila Dev or Kapila Muni is the perfect yoga system. And this knowledge which is given to his mother stays forever. And his mother is going on asking questions. How does she progress in devotional service? You look at the humility of such an exalted person. Mother Devahuti, as we explained, is the daughter of Vaivaswata Manu, such a great devotee of the Lord. She is the wife of Kardam Muni, such a great yogi. She is the mother of Kapila Dev, who's Supreme Personality of Godhead, but still she is humbly surrendering to her own son as the spiritual master and taking instructions from him. And Kapila Muni himself says that he shall explain the yoga system, the object of which is to concentrate the mind. The only object of the yoga system should be to focus our mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by practicing this yoga system, one can become joyful. What are we looking at? We're all looking at happiness. And with this happiness, we can progressively advance towards the path of absolute truth. That is what we are really looking at it. So at the end of the day, whatever Hatha yoga system or, the yoga practices that have been taught, and the system of yoga, which is given by Kapila Muni, is also known as Ashtanga Yoga. And this comprises of 8 different practices, as we earlier discussed in the purport. It includes Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. Finally, it is Samadhi. And by this stages of practice, the only goal that one should really have is to achieve or to realize the Supreme Personality of God, which is Lord Vishnu. In the current day scenario within the material world, we see people practicing yoga system just to ensure that their body is kept well. But that should not be the end goal. The end goal of the Ashtanga Yoga is to achieve or to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the so-called system that we are talking about, just keeping the body, or which is concentrating on the mind on the voidness, there's nothing. I don't know how people really can concentrate on voidness, or how can they focus something on, or concentrate on impersonal things. There's nothing. How can you really have relationship? When you have impersonal, then there is no relationship. The relationship is created when there is a person. There can be only relation when you have a person. You have another person. You can't have relation with something which is not there. You can't have relationship with something which is void. So at the end of the discussion, I would like to just sum it up. The process of yoga, which is explained by Kapila Muni to his mother Devahuti, is the one practice which system which one becomes joyful and progressively advances towards the path of absolute truth. And the object of this is to concentrate our mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and achieve Supreme Personality of Godhead, or to surrender unto Supreme Personality of Godhead. While doing so, we take help of a bona fide spiritual master. Who's a bona fide spiritual master? A bona fide spiritual master is one who's perfect all by himself. And how does he become perfect? Because he's hearing from another perfect spiritual master, and the parampara goes up, and we are hearing from the perfect personality of Godhead, which is Krishna himself. And that's why the knowledge which comes in parampara becomes perfect. So we have to hear from a perfect person. An imperfect person cannot give you a perfect knowledge. It is not possible. If I don't know maths, and if I try to teach you maths, I'm cheating you, I'm cheating myself. How can you become master of maths without my knowing maths? How can I teach you maths without knowing myself maths? So if I'm not perfect in any particular area, you cannot become perfect, because you're taking knowledge from an imperfect person. So we should take knowledge from a perfect person, and then only we can become perfect. So that's the conversation for today's shlokas that we had from the 28th chapter. The chapter is titled Kapila Muni's Instructions on the Execution of Devotional Service. We went through the first and the second shloka. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if you have any comments, please go ahead and make the comments. If there's nothing, then we can end our session for today. Thank you very much for joining this morning. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.